Hope your week is off to a good start. I'm Min San Hee with our panel of foreign journalists. Welcome to the show.
Good to be back. Thanks.
Right, Frank. So what do you believe is the significance of the 100-day mark for the Moon administration?
Well, personally, I don't think it holds a tremendous amount of significance. It's really such a short period of time. However, it does offer a window into the future and maybe an early report card. He has done the most important thing, which is to offer stability to the position following the turmoil of the impeachment of former President Park Geun-hye and the corruption scandal that enveloped the country last fall. That, I feel, is the most important accomplishment.
It's interesting that his poll numbers are holding pretty steady. I believe he had 70% and maybe a little bit more approval rating after he became president. Now, whether that will last, we don't know. North Korea has not been insulting him as North Korean rhetoric did insult his predecessor, Park Geun-hye, about whom they used very bad language. But I think they may be a little disappointed that he's not that he's still professing total support for the U.S.-Korean alliance, and that he's very strongly condemning North Korea's nuclear and missile program, and that he's making overtures to talk to North Korea. North Korea is not responding to these overtures, which is disturbing in itself. So, we have a long way to go. This could just be a honeymoon period. It could just be, we could go through another few months or another year.
Right. Don just talked about his President Moon Jae-in's approval rating standing at 70%. What do you think, which is the reason behind this high popularity?
Well, I think, first is his openness, communication skill, and second one is he looks like much focused on common people, ordinary people, and his economic policy is also focusing on that. I think that's the biggest reason why.
We've been talking about this from the start. His interactions with the public, with the press, with leaders of the corporate world, it's been quite radical, quite different from those of previous administrations. What comes to mind when you think about his interaction with the public? Something that you remembered, something that you thought was quite notable, remarkable?
Well, actually, it's not really something that it has to do with specifically with his interactions with the public, but I think it has to do with his value system and where he came from. If you look at Lee Myung-bak and Park Geun-hye, Lee Myung-bak may have come from humble circumstances, but he became a CEO of a fairly large company, or a leader in a fairly large company, part of the chaebol that really Moon Jae-in has his sights set on to draw down a bit and rein in the corruption between government and big business. And there was a picture taken when he was at an event, and it was a photograph of his shoes taken from behind, and he was wearing fairly worn out shoes at the time. And for me, it was the shoes that told me a different value system that this president had in comparison to the two presidents that preceded him.
It will be really interesting, though, to see if he can rein in the chaebol. This happens with every administration. No president has really succeeded. Certainly, his predecessor didn't succeed at all. She did say that she was going to rein in the chaebol, and in fact, by the time she was finished, she was very much, in collusion with the chaebol. One of the reasons she's in jail. So, will President Moon be able to really counter the chaebol issue? So far, I don't see too many signs of that. But it'll be very interesting and maybe even exciting to see what he does do.
Right, because he has pledged to root out corruption. Koichi, how well is this initiative going in your opinion?
At the press conference, well, he also said that he is not targeting specific people about this, issue.
특정 사건에 대한 조사와 처벌, 또 특정 세력에 대한 어떤 조사와 처벌, 이런 것이 적폐청산의 목표라고 생각하지 않습니다.
I think what he was trying to say at the press conference was he want to create a fair society. By creating fair society, this kind of bad thing will disappear. And well, it's kind of persuasive, and I think what I felt was very modest way of thinking.
Another thing he said at the news conference in regards to reining in the corruption of chaebol with big business was he wasn't just targeting one or two companies. He said that this is an ongoing effort to end and sever the collusion between big business and government in South Korea.
제가 생각하는 그 적폐 그 청산은 우리 사회를 아주 불공정하게 또 불평등하게 만들었던 많은 반칙과 특권들을 일소하고.
It remains to be seen then. Opposition parties have accused President Moon Jae-in of resorting to populism. What are your thoughts on this, Frank?
Well, I think I would have to agree with that to a certain extent. I mean, his sort of, some would call it flip-flopping on THAAD as an example of that. How after the most recent provocations from North Korea, he suggested that the U.S. and South Korea negotiate on bringing in the other four launchers, on deploying them. But, the president should speak to and represent his, voters, those that voted for him, perhaps most, but he's also said that he'll represent those that didn't vote for him.
In this next report, we explore some of the tasks that lie ahead for the Moon administration, including North Korea's nuclear ambitions. We discussed this a couple of times in our previous episodes, but the new administration has a two-track policy regarding North Korea, the use of carrots and sticks. Given the latest developments, Frank, do you believe there needs to be a shift in this policy?
I don't think there can be a shift. Oddly enough, I consider it Moon Jae-in trying to have his cake and eat it too in terms of his policy toward North Korea. It's becoming increasingly difficult for him, I think, to suggest that he and President Donald Trump have the same policy toward North Korea, particularly given Donald Trump's incendiary threats toward Pyongyang recently. His preference, certainly, and he's demonstrated this and said this before, is for engagement with Pyongyang. Now, the bar has kind of shifted to what is required for engagement. The U.S. previously had called for some type of measures from North Korea before that they would negotiate with North Korea. There have been ongoing provocations. Now the South Korean president is saying, as long as there are not more missile tests and nuclear tests, the path toward negotiations is open. Previously, the U.S. wanted much more than that. They wanted some other statements or moves from the North Korean government to abandon its nuclear weapons programs. But I think that, from my personal opinion, is that should be enough to negotiate. Negotiations should be unconditional in trying to seek a resolution to this problem.
The trouble with unconditional negotiations, of course, is that they're almost by definition conditional, because North Korea is not going to negotiate an end to its nuclear and missile program. So there won't be any seriously unconditional negotiations. Another problem is that North Korea seems to be waiting for some significant positive sign from South Korea. They got these exercises coming up. President Moon has reaffirmed the strength of the U.S.-Korean alliance. North Korea wants to see some weakening of this alliance. They want to see some backing down from exercises, if not cancellation of them, at least softening of them. I think President Trump is already backing down. I think he's agreeing with President Moon that we're not going to do anything without your approval. And I don't think he may have talked about fire and fury, and the other term was locked and loaded, ready to fire at North Korea. But now that North Korea has backed off from the Guam threat, I think that President Trump is searching for some common ground with South Korea so that they can present a united front with South Korea. And I don't think North Korea is going to like that either. So I don't think, I think it's going to be very hard to bring about negotiations. It may happen, but I don't think they're going to be unconditional.
Within the criticism of the new government by opposition parties is the reality that they believe, the opposition parties believe, that the new administration is not taking a front role with the issue of North Korea, that it's not even taking a passenger seat, it's decided to take a back seat with regard to tensions on the peninsula. In what ways, perhaps, could Seoul, South Korea, take a leading role in issues here on the peninsula then?
If I go back to President Moon's policy, I think he's doing well because he's trying to maintain good relationship with the United States. This is very key, on the contrary of what people usually think. North Korea criticizes South Korea when South Korea is close to U.S., but actually if South Korea and U.S. relationship is good, North Korea will try to persuade U.S. through South Korea. So that's why South and North dialogue become meaningful. So Moon Jae-in administration is understanding this logic. That's why he's getting trying to be closer to U.S. and putting pressure along with U.S. They think it's better for South-North relationship in the long run.
Debate surrounding the deployment of THAAD has been fierce, like Don mentioned earlier. How do you see this issue unfolding in the future?
I think that much too much is made of THAAD, frankly. I just think that issue is not as important as it's made out to be. The U.S. has plenty of bombers around here, strategic bombers. They have air base at Osan and Kunsan. So I don't think, and THAAD is just one element in this huge defensive strategy. Another big problem surrounding THAAD is the Chinese reaction. The Chinese just don't like it at all. But what threat does THAAD really pose to China? Okay, they have some super radar which can apparently tell what the Chinese are doing, but so what? What are the Chinese going to do? Who are they firing at? They're not going to start firing missiles and long-range artillery. They don't want to go into war here either. They want stability.
I think Don's mention of China's reservations about that is probably the most important aspect of it. It has had a devastating effect on South Korea's tourism revenue. At the same time, for the Chinese, it might represent something of reverse mission creep, in which if you allow that and you don't exhibit any reservations to it, what's next? It's clear to some analysts that THAAD really is aimed at containing China and its ambitions in the South China Sea as it gets a seagoing navy. China's military spending is high. It has the largest, I believe, standing army in the world. So THAAD, as it poses a sort of containment toward China, I think that's the most serious part of it.
I see. How do you foresee Seoul's ties with Washington in the future? I mean, during summit talks in late June, early July, the two presidents reaffirmed their alliance, but they failed to see eye to eye on the free trade deal, with President Trump calling for a revamp of the entire agreement. What are your thoughts? How do you see?
That could be a real problem. Of course, the Korea-U.S. FTA, free trade agreement. President Trump has made clear he doesn't like KORUS any more than he likes other agreements. He's criticizing NAFTA, and he totally killed the U.S. participation in TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I don't know that the U.S. wants to go to the wall on that with South Korea, but they could get back to that, and that could be quite a serious issue. The U.S. is going to be demanding, some revision in KORUS and some further opening, removal of non-tariff barriers. I don't think they're going to be able to resolve KORUS very easily, and it could be quite a serious problem. I do, however, think that a lot of diplomatic negotiations will somehow paper over the cracks, and that we won't have a serious rift between the U.S. and South Korea over KORUS. But we'll be hearing a lot more about KORUS in the next, for the remainder of the Trump administration anyway.
Already you've seen Moon Jae-in take on a strategy of delaying any renegotiating of THAAD, suggesting it would have to go through the National Assembly and setting up some type of committee to analyze how to renegotiate the Chorus Free Trade Agreement. So I think that that sort of stalling, again, will prevent any serious rift between Washington and Seoul over the FTA.
Maybe we should watch NAFTA issue, just deal with how they deal with Mexico and Canada first. Then, if somehow it went a rational way, then South Korea doesn't have to worry about it, maybe.
Right, that's something that we'll have to wait and see. Right. Well, this is probably going to be the last question. So we're here today talking about President Moon Jae-in's first 100 days in office and of some of the tasks he's achieved and those that remain to be tackled. Do you have any words that you would like to share with the new administration before we end the program today? We'll start with you, Frank.
Keep up the good work. I think his approval ratings with the public reflect the job that he's doing. I don't think it's just the people that voted for him. He only got 40% of the vote, and his approval ratings have maintained a level over 70%. So I think he just needs to keep on the track that he's on, and he'll be fine.
What about you, Koichi?
Well, my favorite President Moon Jae-in's policy is income-led growth policy. It's about achieving economic growth by creating jobs and raising minimum wages. And I don't know if it really works, but if it works, then I think Japan can learn quite a lot from that policy. So I'm quite expected what is going to happen on that policy.
What about you, Don?
Well, I hope the honeymoon lasts for the rest of his presidency. Certainly, he's looking good now. I think he's, by modulating his policy toward North Korea, keeping up a strong U.S. alliance, keeping a firm view of North Korea's nuclear missile program, but being very open to dialogue and reconciliation and negotiations. That certainly would I would hope that would endure and, in fact, bring some results.
Right. Well, at his inauguration, President Moon Jae-in pledged to be remembered as a successful leader by both his people and by history. Now, his approval rating indicates that his first few steps are in the right direction, and we hope the rest of his journey will follow the same path. Thank you for watching.